listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Is debt beating you down? You need discipline. You need the Debt Ninja. If you've been caught in a financial trap and need to be set free, then you need the Debt Ninja. Want to stop those harassing collection calls, start saving thousands in interest and fees, and get out of debt fast? Then you need to call the Debt Ninja. The Debt Ninja will find the best companies across the country that will help you consolidate all your bills into one easy payment, reduce your payments by 30 to 50%, and get you out of debt fast. If you have unsecured debt of $10,000 or more, such as credit cards, loans, or medical bills, call the Debt Ninja for a free 15-minute consultation.
Call 800-826-1246. 800-826-1246. That's 800-826-1246. Call today.
The Debt Ninja.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable, everyday carry, or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
All riders are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your website, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network. Internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all set to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark. Welcome to Opinion Nation.
And we stand today on the edge of a new frontier.
There is nothing wrong with America that cannot be cured by what is right with America.
What makes us Americans is our shared commitment to an ideal that all of us are created equal.
I, too, am American.
Now here's your host, Bryce Robbins.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another installment of Opinion Nation. So today, I have, again, to continue the series, another batch of a presidential guest waiting to come on. So the topic that surrounds this party is interesting. I have to say, I've actually heard about it before, but now we're going to hear about it from the source, the main source. Both him and his vice presidential guest are with us today, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce both presidential candidate Frank Atwood and his vice presidential candidate Blake Huber. Correct me if I pronounced your names wrong by any chance, but other than that, how are you guys doing?
This is Frank Atwood.
How are you doing?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Great. Frank Atwood and myself and Blake Huber are running for president here in Colorado. We're on the ballot so that voters will be motivated to Google and investigate approval voting. Let my running mate Blake put in a few words.
Thank you, Frank. That really is the impetus of our campaign. We really don't want people to vote for us because currently, if you vote for us with the choose one system we currently have, if you vote for us, that means you're not voting for somebody else. So, like when Ross Perot ran back in 1992 and when Ralph Nader ran in 2000, you would be wasting your vote if you voted for us rather than vote for a potential winner. And we kind of see things differently. We don't see elections as win-lose. We see elections as just that, elections.
So this is a question, I guess, for either of you to answer. So your campaign is more or less to advertise a message, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
So perhaps you can explain approval voting because I've heard of it, but it's very interesting, and I think it's actually a wonderful concept. So to let the audience know, if one of you could explain what approval voting is for us.
What I like to use is the current jingle, which is mark all the candidates yay or nay. Most yays win at the end of the day. This implies and is talking about you, the voter, expressing an opinion about each of the candidates. With regards to each of the candidates, you express whether you like them or don't. Let's say, hypothetically, there's a terrible candidate on the ballot, and you're really motivated and spun up in hatred of that terrible candidate, and you're as mean-spirited as I am. You might decide to vote for all the candidates except that terrible one. Approval voting lets you express your preferences and not be frustrated or angry that the other candidates didn't hear your expressions.
Okay.
I like to look at it along those same lines. I like to look at it from a more positive perspective. If I can remind you when you're back in 5th grade and the teacher came in and said, we're going to make a decision, we have 3 options and we're going to decide on one option. And she simply says, and this actually happened with one of the people that came to one of our booths as we're talking about and promoting approval voting. The teacher would say, okay, you can vote for more than one. Everybody for option A, raise your hand. Everybody for option B, raise your hand. Everybody for option C, raise your hand. Okay, B wins. That has the most hands raised. I don't mind because I voted for A and B. Someone else doesn't mind because they voted for B and C. Higher group satisfaction. Most hands raised, that's the option that is selected. It's that simple.
So it's almost as, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems that the person who wins is, it's not plurality, it's more or less who will please the most people.
Well, I think you're right, Bryce. In essence, we're looking for group satisfaction, and it's not a matter of pleasing the most people. It's a matter of who resonates with the most people in the group. Again, this is a group decision. Who resonates with the most people in the group on specific issues? Mm-hmm. So for me, I would vote for all the candidates that represent me on the issues. I don't vote for just one because he best represents me or he has the best mix. I vote for all the candidates that represent me on the issues. If my first choice doesn't get elected, and again, it's not a win-lose situation. This is whoever gets the highest approval.
Mm-hmm.
Let me back up for just a second and explain a little bit further. We did this at several different events. At one event, we said who should be in the debates, what Republicans should be in the debates. And Ben Carson and Ted Cruz led, in this particular group, led all the way through, whether you choose one or you could choose as many as you like. Bobby Jindal got 0 votes when you could only choose one. But when you could choose as many as you like, he was marked on 50% of the ballots.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's interesting is Ben Carson won with this particular group with 69% approval, and Ted Cruz came in second with 65% approval. That's a high group satisfaction.
Right. Well, that's actually that's interesting. So I guess yeah. I'm sorry.
Right. Another election we ran was who should be Donald Trump's running mate. This was conducted about the 4th of July weekend, and what happened is when you could only choose one candidate, Newt Gingrich came in first and Ben Carson came in fourth. With approval voting, where you could vote for more than one candidate, Ben Carson came in first and Newt Gingrich came in fourth. A flip-flop here to indicate that even though Newt Gingrich had fanatical support, he didn't have as broad support as Ben Carson did when you let Ben Carson voters, the voters vote for more than one candidate. Most of the time, the winner is usually the same individual. But in these two illustrations, you can hear the difference of the voter having the opportunity to express himself honestly about each candidate. Thank you.
So now, I just want to be clear. The person who gets the majority of the votes still wins, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I don't like to call it winning. He gets elected.
Okay, yeah.
The group wins because they elect the person that they feel the strongest and has the highest approval.
Mm-hmm.
So you can call it a win-lose situation if you like to. But our current system, where you can only choose one, means we lose. If you want to pit people, here's another example, and this may bring the subject really clear for all of us. You're driving a bus. There's 10 hockey players on this bus, and they say, "Driver, we're hungry." You see 2 restaurants up ahead of you. One's a pizza place, and one's a barbecue place. So you like barbecue. So you say, who wants to go to the barbecue place? Well, 6 of the 10 say, the majority says, let's go to barbecue. The 4 say, that's against our religion. We can't eat pork. We want pizza. And then to keep a fight from breaking out, because you know about approval voting, you say, okay, let's do it this way. Everybody who's in favor of barbecue, raise your hand. Everybody who's in favor of pizza, raise your hand. All 10 raise their hand with pizza. Higher group satisfaction. May not have been your first choice as driver, may not have been my first choice as one of the teammates, but it satisfies the entire group because I get one of the options that I'm okay with. Mm-hmm. And you could have had a third and fourth option on Chinese food, Mexican food, whatever. You would still find pizza had the highest group satisfaction. Does that help make better sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a little curious, though. So I've heard the term before, what was it? Rank, wait, I have to think of the name. It was something along the lines of, like, you rank the candidates 1 through, let's say, 4. Or ranked choice voting. You rank them 1 through 4. Now, the person who gets 1 the most, or the person who has the most ones will get the election. Is that the same thing, or is that different? And it's basically to show, who approves the most of a certain person. So essentially, there are 4 candidates. Person 1 gets a lot of the 1 votes and a mixture of 2s. So it's basically the lowest score essentially will win. Is that the same thing here? I'm a little just want to know.
No.
Frank, why don't you go ahead and take this first? You know how I feel about it. You know how strongly I feel. So go ahead.
Okay. What you're thinking of, Bryce, is a method that is called ranked choice voting, and also sometimes known as instant runoff voting.
Right.
Neither of those is what we're talking about. We're talking about a far simpler approach that's you as the voter simply check off those that you like.
Mm-hmm.
You're not too often with ranked choice voting. There's voter fatigue as you're getting down, ranking more of the candidates and trying to sift your way through them. There's voter fatigue that kicks in. Also, it's fairly complicated on the math. Also, it requires a consolidation at a single point. That method is used currently in a few municipalities in California, also in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and we'll see. Ours is a more recent introduction that's far simpler and is no additional cost. Blake, would you like to continue?
Yeah, I agree with everything Frank said. One thing he didn't mention is ranked choice voting, as well as approval voting, are far superior to what we currently have.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we went nationwide with ranked choice voting, it would not be my preference, but it would be way better than what we currently have. And I'd be in favor of any alternative method to our current choose one system.
Right.
The thing that I don't like about ranked, well, there's several things I don't like about ranked, but the main thing is, how did you differentiate between your first 1 or 2 choices and your 3rd, 4th, or 5th choice? There could be a major gap between number 2 and number 3. For you, there may be no gap, and for me, there may be a major gap. And ranked choice voting doesn't allow you to fully express yourself that way. With approval voting, you only vote for the ones you agree with, the ones you approve. So you have choices 1 and 2 for me, 3, 4, and 5 I don't vote for. You may vote for 1, 2, and 3 and don't vote for 4 and 5. You are truly expressing in a positive way the issues that candidate is bringing to the forefront. It becomes issues, not individuals. And for me, that's far more important.
Mm-hmm. So, I actually do find that interesting. Now, what, I guess, is, when considering approval voting, right, and having this system, is it been tested in any elections that you guys know of? Or is this just, a theory? I mean, I'm just curious here.
Approval voting has been used for internal elections in several political parties, both in the U.S. and in Europe. It's also been using mathematical-oriented organizations like engineers, and Frank can fill you in with more of the detail on which organizations those are. But it has not been used in any public elections to this point. We are working with the legislature in Colorado to create rules. So if a community or a special district or if the state wants to use approval voting, these are the rules that have been promulgated by the Secretary of State. They've been discussed, reviewed, and had public input on. So approval voting can be held a particular way. And that's the focus of why we're on the ballot in Colorado, and that's what we're promoting right now in terms of the next step with approval voting.
Right, and do you think that people's voices would be heard then more? I mean, that's what it sounds like to me, but one other thing that I'm just curious about is, let's say you have 3 people running, then would the math kind of not work in that sense? Because you could have, well, somebody gets the most, they could split it with somebody else, it seems. Am I correct or no?
Bryce, you're not correct. There's no splitting.
Okay.
I want Frank to weigh in on some of the organizations that currently use approval voting and then we can get back to that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Both IEEE, International Electrical Engineering Association uses it. The American Mathematical Association uses it. Here in Colorado Boulder campus, the Student Union uses it, and the Pirate Party in Germany uses it. And yes, I feel this gives viability and visibility to minor factions. The minor factions, you can, with approval voting, express yourself for them without concern that you're wasting your vote on a third party. It lets you, the voter, be honest.
So if you guys don't mind, I would actually like to, Frank, if you could tell us, how did you get involved in approval voting? And how did you get to this point to decide to run for president?
I got involved with approval voting. My wife brought home, I was at Loose Ends about 8 years ago. My wife brought home the book Gaming the Vote by William Poundstone, Why Elections Aren't Fair and What Can Be Done About It. And I read the book and realized that the reason why we had a two-party system is Duverger's law that says with a single precious vote, you're going to coalesce into two parties. I wanted more viability and visibility for other parties, and I got active in it. I did initially looked at instant runoff voting and other methods and found them not as simple and easy to implement, and have been working on advocating for approval voting for about the past 6 years.
Mm-hmm. And oh yes,
and the presidency. You asked about the presidential run.
Yes.
The important thing on a concept like this is talking to the people who are concerned, and we Blake and I realized that the concerned individuals are the voters, and that a method of letting the voters here in Colorado be aware of the concept was to be on the ballot. And that here in Colorado, I'm very grateful that we have a fairly easy threshold to get on. It's quite emotional, but it's a fairly easy threshold, and we've gotten out there and put the message out there that to encourage individuals to both Google and investigate approval voting, and not to vote for us.
I'm just curious then to the reason in which why you were running. If not for the votes, and you're not the first candidate I've had on the show who doesn't want the votes just to get at the message. So my question was for the last person whose message was similar in that sense. What is the purpose of the run? For publicity? For just the, I guess, to say that you're doing it? What is it that made you want to fill out the petition, the paperwork, and all that?
Publicity.
Okay.
Publicity for the concept, and to introduce individuals to the concept. And to quite a number of voters, it's a major paradigm shift. When I first was introduced to approval voting, there were parts of me that thought, oh my God, these people are trying to bring Chicago politics to Colorado. And despite my bias against Chicago politics, I realized, no, this was letting the voters express themselves honestly. And it can be quite if you should join us at our outreach booths. When we're trying to introduce this to people, it's quite often a shock. Some individuals just almost cringe at the concept of letting the voter vote for more than one candidate.
Right.
So it does need the introduction. and I'm grateful for Colorado providing the opportunity.
Right, so in Colorado, do you think that in the next, 10 years we could see approval voting take hold in even local elections?
Yes, I do. I believe in local elections it will begin being used. Here in Colorado, we have what are called home rule cities, and home rule cities, depending on how their charter is worded, are able to determine their own voting method. I happen to be from the city of Littleton. Here in Littleton, we've got a campaign going forward for the 2017 election, for municipal elections to use approval voting. We'll also have other cities use it. And I think every year that we have an election crisis, such as Anderson, Garreau in 92, or in 2000, who knows what election crisis may occur this year, the voter steps back and says, the system isn't letting me express myself honestly. I'm getting more angry and frustrated, and approval voting would solve those problems.
Right. So we are going to take a quick break, if that's okay with you guys, and I would love it if you guys could stick with me till we get back. Sound good?
Look forward to it.
All right.
Thank you.
Great, guys. I am looking forward. Just stay right with us. We're going to go to a quick break to pay some bills, and we will be right back. I am currently joined with Frank Atwood, presidential candidate but doesn't want your vote, and his vice presidential candidate, Blake Huber, and they are talking with us today about approval voting, and it is truly fascinating. So, stay with us. We will be right back to talk more about this interesting topic. I'm Bryce Robbins. This is Opinion Nation. We'll see you in a few.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Is debt beating you down? You need discipline. You need the Debt Ninja. If you've been caught in a financial trap and need to be set free, then you need the Debt Ninja. Want to stop those harassing collection calls, start saving thousands in interest and fees, and get out of debt fast? Then you need to call the Debt Ninja. The Debt Ninja will find the best companies across the country that will help you consolidate all your bills into one easy payment, reduce your payments by 30 to 50%, and get you out of debt fast. If you have unsecured debt of $10,000 or more, such as credit cards, loans, or medical bills, call the Debt Ninja for a free 15-minute consultation.
Call 800-826-1246. 800-826-1246. That's 800-826-1246. Call today.
The Debt Ninja.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable, everyday carry, or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
All riders are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be worth it. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to line edits of full-length novels and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your website, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writings into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
And we stand today on the edge of a new frontier.
There is nothing wrong with America that cannot be cured by what is right with America.
All right, welcome back. My name is Bryce Robbins, and we are here again joined with Frank Atwood. I'm sorry if I pronounced it Artwood by mistake. That must have been a slip of the tongue, but it is Frank Atwood, and I definitely encourage you to look up the message, look up approval voting, because it is an interesting topic, and that is exactly what we were talking about today. So, I am back joined with Frank Atwood and his running mate, Blake Huber. So let me just ask, and I'm just curious to know, and I guess I keep saying this, a force habit. If you don't want votes and the election is not what you're after, what is the need for the running mate? Not to get rid of you here, Blake, but I'm just curious.
No worries, Bryce. Actually, I did want to weigh in on this. Frank and I have been doing this for several years, and we've been going to different events, introducing it retail, I call it retail-wise, with individuals. And we got to thinking, how can we get more intention for approval voting? We wanted to actually create our party be Google approval voting. So when it's listed on the ballot, they would see both Frank and my name with the party name Google approval voting. But because Google is a trade name, we weren't allowed to use that. So we simply named it the approval voting party.
Mm-hmm.
Our hope is people will see that and say, well, what is the approval voting party? And they will then Google approval voting. So there's many different places people can go to get more information about approval voting. One of the best places to go is the Center for Election Science. They're at electology.org. They give lots of good information, unbiased information about alternative methods. They've found approval voting to be the best from an unbiased perspective. You can also go to our Facebook group page, makemyvotecount.org is the easiest way to get to our Facebook page, so you don't have to search for it on Facebook. Again, it's makemyvotecount.org. And also, if your listeners are in Colorado, we encourage them to get involved in our fight with the legislature to create rules that allow local jurisdictions, if they want to use approval voting voluntarily, they will be able to. And that website is AV4co.org. So AV4co.org. Come to our website there. We also have a Facebook page. We encourage everybody to check us out, just see what it's all about.
All right, awesome. So, Blake, this question is for you. You wanted to talk about the splitting of the votes, as well as the splitting of the ticket issue, and then the benefits that adopting approval voting will bring. And if you could, that would definitely be great.
You betcha. I'd be happy to.
Awesome.
Before the break, you started asking me a question, and I wanted to turn it back to Frank, so he had his opportunity to talk about the issues that are important to him. But the splitting vote issue, approval voting actually eliminates the concept of vote splitting. Right now, under our current Choose One system, it's very simple. If you and I are diametrically opposed on issues, let's say you're pro-gay rights and I'm a religious right-wing person, one man, one woman, etc. I'm not, but let's say I was. And I'm unscrupulous and I want to beat you. So you're for gay rights, and what I do, we're 50-50. People in our area vote 50% for me or 50% for you. We're in a dead heat. I want to win. So what I do is I hire somebody who also is in favor of gay rights. You two end up splitting the vote. You get 47%, he gets 3%, or 40 and 10, or whatever. I win with my 50%. Bryce, that's not illegal.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel that's immoral And we're incentivizing people to do that with our Choose One system. So we have to change it. With approval voting, you get your 50%. The other fella gets his 3%. I get my 50%. And we're still in a dead heat. And at some point, the electorate is going to figure, well, they're going to either side with me or you. They're going to choose the issue that's important to them and vote for that issue. That's one of the biggest benefits of approval voting is you won't split your vote. Another benefit we've already talked about is you won't waste your vote because you're voting for something. You're not voting against something. Unless, as Frank mentioned, you vote for all the candidates except that terrible candidate. I don't even know how they got on the ballot. I would move out of the country. I'd move to Mexico if they got elected. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that's really important to me is, and we don't have proof of this, and I wish we did, but approval voting over a period of election cycles will attract better qualified candidates to the ballot. So, and let me digress for just a second.
Absolutely.
Republicans tell me this, and I don't know that it's true. I've seen proof to it. In fact, electology has a scale that shows if they use approval voting in the primaries, Rubio, and I think it was Cruz would have been at the top of the list. Donald Trump would have been eighth using approval voting. So all I'm trying to say, and I'm not trying to say that's the case, and I'm not trying to downplay Trump at all. If your listeners are Trump supporters, go for it. He's your candidate. That's great. But what I'm trying to say is if you want better candidates that have a wider appeal amongst the group, right now our system focuses on fanatical followings. And all we have to do is get X number of votes. In our experiment where Newt Gingrich was the, quote, winner in that race when you could choose only one, when Ben Carson was selected by the group, we find that he had double the number of votes that Newt Gingrich had.
Right.
Double the number of votes under approval than under choose one. And to me, that means a lot. And again, I think it'll draw in better candidates. Number one, negative campaigning will go away because there's no incentive for me to trash you. If I'm a Ford dealer, I'm not going to trash Chevy because I want you to buy my Ford. I'm going to tell you everything great about the Ford. I've had candidates actually come to me after I've introduced them to approval voting and say, this is great, Blake. So what I can say to people is, if you want to vote for him or her, go ahead and vote for him or her. I don't know anything about them. But give me your final approval because here's my resume. Here's what I stand for. And I can do the best job representing you in whatever office I'm going to hold.
I got to say, this is actually absolutely sounds fascinating. And, when you said that it would get rid of negative campaigning and whatnot, I thought about it for a little bit and just now, and I was thinking, well, that's absolutely true. It seems that those people would be focusing on why they should be selected. So, it really actually begs the question to me, in my mind, why is this not being used? Is there something hidden in there that you guys aren't telling me about? Because it sounds great.
I'd like to comment on that.
Yeah, please.
Bryce, is that initially when United States democracy started off, it was a fairly novel concept.
Mm-hmm.
And even for George Washington, it was a surprise to him that it evolved into a two-party system.
Right.
And so I think what happened was there wasn't quite the science and the awareness of it. And the momentum has continued such that now I've had an individual say to me, this will jeopardize the two-party dominance here in Colorado, which I reply, I don't really believe so. I believe that dominance and hegemony will continue, but that what it does do is it gives viability and visibility to minor factions and different issues. What I'd like to also mention is sometimes we get distracted by the details, such as the ballot access laws, the debate access, but for both ballot access, even here in Colorado, where we're spoiled with numerous political parties and numerous candidates on the ballot, still, when it comes to the presidential noise of the noise, voters aren't going to waste their vote on beyond the major two parties. Mm-hmm. Debate access falls into that. The linchpin is the voting method, and approval voting's the ticket out of our current two-party dilemma, and this year choices that people are so unhappy with.
So now let me ask...
Sure.
Let
me add to that, Bryce, just real quick. There's a law that Frank brought up earlier, and we differ on the pronunciation. I pronounce it Duverger's Law. It's actually spelled Duverger. And Duverger's Law simply shows how polarization happens when you can simply choose only one. Now, these ideas have been kicked around since the 1800s. Okay, so maybe our founders didn't focus in on approval voting and make it the rule, but we really need to go there. I think the elections we've had, the crises, as Frank has mentioned, that have come up, is what's created the need for it.
So now, what I want to know, though, is if, let's just say, hypothetically, the United States overhauled its elections, we were now approval voting, what I'm concerned with is that the promise that we wouldn't have the candidates we do, there are still millions and millions of of people who supported Donald Trump and who supported Hillary Clinton. I just read the other day that Donald Trump got more votes than Ronald Reagan did as a Republican. My question then is, would this really change who got elected? Or who's getting the nominations, and would it actually change us away from the two-party system? Because there still seems to be a very big divide in this country on ideology. So perhaps if you could break it down a little bit further for me and the listeners.
Sure, you bet, Bryson. And I like to think of it this way. Do we limit the number of taco places we have in town? The marketplace speaks. The marketplace tells us how many taco restaurants we can have. The marketplace tells us how many car dealers and how many car manufacturers there should be. The marketplace tells us through group decisions. And one of the things I wanted to mention earlier, and I've forgotten, and now I'll mention it.
Yeah, sure.
This concept, approval voting, is actually a great method for making group decisions. You and your significant other are trying to decide on a restaurant or a movie, and you have multiple options. You can only choose one option, or one option is the one that's going to be selected. You have two more people deciding on three or more options when only one option is going to be the selection. You use approval voting, and you take all of your options, 10 or 15 options, you mark the ones you approve, your significant other or people in your group do the same thing on their ballots. Whichever has the highest group approval, that's the one that you select. The movie you go to, the restaurant you go to. So this is not just about elections. This is about making better group selections. And when I brought this up at one event, the CEO came to me and said, Blake, I'm going to use this as a team-building exercise. So it's not John's proposal or Mary's proposal or Joe's proposal. It's proposal A, B, and C. And I like A, but I also like B. And I like parts of C, but I don't like D, E, and F. So then the focus comes down to the consensus. Aren't we better off with consensus leaders than having this flip-flop between hawks and peacemakers, between pro-choice and pro-life, between pro-gay rights and anti-gay rights, between ending the drug war through legalization of marijuana or keeping kids in jail and getting black people in jail because they perhaps they use it more. I don't know. I don't want to get into all those issues, but you can see where I'm coming from.
Mm-hmm.
If Ronald Reagan was running today, he would have been elected under approval voting as well as any other system. If Donald Trump, he gets more votes as a Republican amongst Republicans, but does he appeal to other factions, other electoral groups? Does he appeal to gays? Does he appeal to women? Does he appeal to the military? We see, and I'm not so sure about this, I don't have facts in front of me, but my understanding is the Libertarian candidate, Gary Johnson, is favored more among active duty military personnel.
Right, I've read that too.
That's fascinating.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I'd like to add, what I tell when I do talk with minor factions, I say I can't promise you victory. What I can promise you is viability and visibility. That voters will be able to honestly express an opinion for you, and you'll be counted. Even though you might not win, you'll at least have an awareness of how much support you do have.
And Bryce, Frank is exactly right. But what about the independents? What about those people who do not want to identify with a party? Do they get subjugated and say, well, shame on you for running. Shame on you for being in this election. Shame on you for taking votes from somebody else. Shame on you for voting for them. Bryce, we need shameless voting.
Right.
We need approval.
So now, let me, and this part, it just kind of popped into my head. If the debate, I guess, structure were to change and more people were allowed on the stage, do you think that the current system could work, or do you think we just need to scrap the system? Is the problem more or less rooted in the ability for candidates to get their name out, or is it just the voting system in general?
So when we have a system that discriminates, okay, when we have a system that shames you for not being a Republican or a Democrat, one of the two major parties, we are then discouraging. Number one, we're incentivizing bad actors, as I mentioned before, and we're also discouraging people from getting into elections, getting into the electoral process. Would you run for office if you knew that your vote was going to take away from a like-minded individual? No. Are you better qualified from that like-minded individual? Perhaps. So if we have a lawyer running and we have a business owner running, the business owner, who has a much better following in the community, may not want to come up against the lawyer because, well, the lawyer's pretty much who I am. He's like 70%. So why am I going to go against him, even though I know I have a better chance of winning against his opponent, who's only 30% in agreement with what I feel? So if we had approval voting, both like-minded individuals could run. Both like-minded individuals could share the vote. They get, maybe your opponent, your like-minded opponent, gets a 50% approval rating, and you get a 57% approval rating, and your opponent gets a 40% approval rating. The group has spoken. Right. Now, I did want to focus on one thing, and I know we're coming up on basically the end of our time, but I wanted to mention one thing about adoption. So right now, we do not have national election laws, or we have very few national election laws, and they deal with time and place more than anything else. This is an effort that's state by state, and we're really focusing on the state of Colorado because Frank and I happen to both live there. So we're interested in changing laws state by state. We want to get this adopted. Now, from our point of view, we want the state to adopt it, to allow it to happen in that state. And what we want to do is we want to look at individual cities to take this on a city-by-city basis so we can get experience. We have no idea what the unintended consequences may be. Now, we've had the gaming theory experts look at this to see how it can be gamed, and we're finding there really isn't any negatives that we can discover. And there is no additional cost. We've talked to voting machine manufacturers, and they say there's no additional cost to remove the overvote. Right now, if you vote for more than one, it's an overvote. So on voting machines, on the electoral, the visual counting, the machines you put through the scanner machines, they're programmed to reject a ballot if it's an overvote. Simple programming process, very minimal cost, if anything. The one thing we don't know about is educational costs. And we think it's going to be very simple. But with anything, if you think it's great, and then you find out you're a bit on the butt because you didn't do a focus group, and you find out, oh, crap, we didn't think about that. We want to start small and take baby steps with small communities to see how they like it, what issues did we come up with, so we can move forward and tweak things somewhat. And we're going to do that in Colorado. Gotcha.
So now, I have a couple more questions. We have a little bit more time. We got off to a little late start here. So, what I'm actually wondering now, because, you know, the more and more I think about this, is I think about Bernie Sanders and the Democratic nomination process with Hillary Clinton. How many people I heard say, well, I like Bernie, I want Bernie to win, but I know he won't, so I'm going to vote for Hillary. Now, would this be the remedy to that fear, essentially?
I have a question for you, Bryce. Why did Bernie run as a Democrat?
Oh, that is a good question, because there was no chance he felt that he could win otherwise.
Because of our voting system, he could not get enough attention as an independent because our voting system shamed him.
Yeah.
If Bernie hadn't been shamed into running as a Democrat, he would have run as an independent, and he may have had my vote.
And I agree. That actually seems to be that we found some common ground here on this idea. I mean, well, now I just want to sum up the idea of approval voting for people who may have just tuned in after the commercial break and are still kind of curious. The idea, more or less, is that you vote for as many candidates as you want that you agree with, and in theory, the person who has the overall consensus from the majority of the people will be the one who is thus elected. Correct?
That is exactly right.
Let's repeat the jingle again.
Yes, please.
Mark all the candidates, yay or nay. Most yays win at the end of the day.
Now,
as I mentioned earlier, Bryce, with the bus driving and the potential riot with the Choose One system, all of a sudden became a consensus vote where 100% of the people agreed with another choice. May not have been their first choice, may have been their first choice, but when they were able to vote for more than one, we found a consensus.
Gotcha. All right, guys. So, if you don't mind, Blake Huber and then the presidential candidate, Frank Atwood, if you guys could just tell me a little bit, a closing line from both of you and where we can find you in the future, where the audience can find you, and yeah. So, Blake, why don't you start with it?
Bryce, this is Frank
Atwood,
and I'll be advocating for approval voting. I look forward to the results of this election, and will continue to push for approval voting and want the emphasis to be approval voting. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
And again, Bryce, my name is Blake Huber. I'm on Facebook. You can find me easily. Go to makemyvotecount.org to join our effort on Facebook. Also, you can go to AV4, the number 4, AV4CO.org to join our effort in Colorado, if you're in Colorado. And I'd like to recommend 3 things for your listeners to do. Experiment with approval voting. If you belong to a club or organization, get your club or organization to experiment with electing your leaders using approval voting, where you can vote for as many as you like. I encourage you also to go to your city council, your mayor or your city council, and ask them to do a focus group on approval voting. My feeling is you'll find non-voters saying, oh, I can vote for something. And you'll find voters who've voted all their lives saying, oh, I don't have to hold my nose anymore. I can actually vote for 2 or 3 candidates. Just as an aside, my mother's 97 years old. And I introduced her to all the different alternative methods. I introduced her to ranking. I introduced her to approval voting. And she says, oh, I like that. So I don't have to decide between 2 ones that I like best. If I like them equally, I don't have to rank one above the other. I can simply say I like them both. So she's for approval voting. And the third thing you can do, and I think you should all do this, please, use approval voting in your personal life. When your group is trying to decide on what one restaurant to go to, or one restaurant to order food from, or one movie to go to, do approval voting. List all the options. Everybody selects all the options they favor. And whatever option has the highest favorability, has the highest approval, has the most votes, is the ones that's selected. We need to get away from this us versus them scenario, and we need to get to it's all about us, not us versus them. We don't need to flip-flop from pro-choice, pro-life, war, peace, spend money, save money, whatever. We need to come to consensus on what works best.
Sounds
and
good.
If any of your listeners are legislators, introduce in your legislative body the ability to introduce multiple bills that differ somewhat, a little by little, incrementally, and then have the electors vote for all the ones they agree with, and you'll find consensus very quickly. It's not an up-down binary thing.
Sounds good. Well, thank you both for joining me today and the audience, and I'm sure that they will have a lot to think about. I mean, it's definitely something that makes you think. So thank you guys for joining us, and I hope to have you back one day.
Bryce, Robin, it's been a pleasure.
All right. This will be going up this Saturday. You guys, I will send you the links as soon as it's ready.
Thanks
Great.
again.
All right. Bye, guys.
Thank you, sir. Great, bye.
Bye-bye. All right, so that was presidential candidate Frank Atwood and his running mate, Blake Huber. Now, they are running for president and vice president, but they are not running for your vote. So that is the second candidate I believe we've had on who is running, but not running to win. And the interesting thing that I find here is that, you know, I have independents who think that they're going to win. I had many candidates who think they're going to win, but then I have the realists who are shooting for a message, and I really appreciate that. I think it works better. I think it makes more sense, and I think that these were two men who have an idea, and they're trying to get their message out. Now, if you like their idea, definitely hit them up at the sites that they've given. Look up approval voting, and if you liked it, you know what? Go for it. I'm actually going to give it a second look. At first, I was hesitant, as normally I am with new ideas, as most of us should be, always skeptical. But, I want to look more into it, definitely. It seems like something that municipalities may be able to take up. It looks like some type of... it appeared to me to be more of a direct democracy type. But you know what? Let's look into it and reach out to me on my Facebook or Twitter. That's at Robbins Bryce or at Bryce Robbins on Facebook. Tell me what you think. Go to KLRN Radio on Facebook and follow us on Twitter as well at KLRN Radio. And always stay tuned for Opinion Nation. Now, I have an awesome announcement, actually. So, this upcoming Monday, I will be recording an episode with Constitutional Party Daryl Castle, who's been endorsed by Glenn Beck. Well, not endorsed fully. Glenn Beck said he'd be voting for him, so I guess it's kind of an endorsement, but he's voting for the guy. But again, another big party, another big third party. He's up there with Jill Stein and Gary Johnson, that area. Still hunting down good old Gary Johnson. Maybe we can get him on the show. So Daryl Castle will be a nice big interview we can do, and I hope that everybody catches that one and tunes in for that. All right, so that's really all I have for this week, but I'm glad we could get to meet some new presidential candidates, and next week we will meet some more. All right, everybody, my name is Bryce Robbins. This is Opinion Nation, and believe me, we have socialists, we have Constitutional Party, we have workers' parties. We got them in the stores for you. Until November 8th, we will be doing this presidential series. So, till then, I'm Bryce Robbins, this is Opinion Nation, and I'll catch you next week, everybody. Have a good one.
And we stand today on the edge of a new frontier.
There is nothing wrong with America that cannot be cured by what is right with America.
What makes us Americans is our shared commitment to an ideal that all of us
listening to the Spark Radio Network, Internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.